This is grade 5, module 3, lesson 3, and the objective in this lesson is to add fractions with unlike units using the strategy of creating equivalent fractions. So they're going to use what they previously learned about creating equivalent fractions when the denominators are different. And I'm going to model that for you using homework problem number 1, and this is letter F, so this is example F. So I have my two fractions here, and I'm going to show you a rectangular model for each of those. So I drew my rectangular models for fifths and sevenths, and now I'm just going to shade in the parts. So this is saying that we're going to talk about 3/5 here, so that's going to be this section, and this section here. That's showing 3/5, and on the model next to it, it's 3/7. So, and 1, 2, I'm just shading it in here, okay? So this is 3/7. Now, in order to do the equivalent fractions, we're going to do the same model underneath, and we're going to partition into our 5 sections, and I'm going to shade in the same 3 sections. And I have to draw my 7 columns because the other denominator here is 7. So I'm going to draw my 7 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops. Okay, and now I can count up my sections that are shaded in green. Okay, and I have my fraction represented from that grid as 21/35. Now I have my 3/7, and now I'm going to partition to make 5 rows right on the same grid. And I'm counting those sections to get the equivalent fraction, and it's 15/35. So now I have 21/35, and I'm adding 15/35, which gives me an answer of 36/35. And the numerator is larger than what the denominator is of 35. So the students should be able to see this as the students would see it as 35/35 plus 1/35, and that is going to be equal to 1 and 1/35. So their answer up here for 3/5 plus 3/7, the answer would be 1 and 1/35. And just drawing the rectangles helps the students find their common denominator, and it is a visual model for them too. So if you have a child who's a visual learner, it's very helpful to see it that way. The next problem that I'm going to show you is number 3 from the homework, and it says Cynthia completed 2/3 of the items on her to-do list in the morning and finished 1/8 of the items during her lunch break. What fraction of her to-do list is finished by the end of her lunch break? And then there's an extension on this one. What fraction of her to-do list does she still have to do after lunch? So this is asking us 2 different things. So we'll start with the question before we get to the extension. And so she did 2/3 of her to-do list in the morning, and then she finished 1/8 of the items during her lunch break. Then our problem is 2/3 plus 1/8. So again, I'm going to show this using our rectangles. So in my first rectangle right here, I'm going to write my 2/3, or I'm going to shade in 2/3 of that. So here's 1, here's 2 sections. Then in the rectangle next to it, I have it partitioned into 8s, and just one of these sections would be 1/8. So I'm going to draw these same rectangles underneath, and we're going to partition them using both 1/3 and 1/8. And I'm shading in my 2/3 here, and now I'm going to partition this into 1/8. Okay, so I've created an equivalent fraction of 16/24. And if you notice, there's 16 out of the 24 pieces that are shaded in this rectangle right here. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the 1/8 and finding the equivalent fractions. I need to partition into thirds. And you can see that it is equivalent to 3/24. So if I add 16/24 and 3/24, I get a sum of 19/24. And this is what Cynthia finished on her to-do list. So my target sentence, actually I'll just write it over here. I usually set it up ahead of time, but I'm going to write it over here on the side. 19/24 of her to-do list is finished by the end of her lunch break. Okay, so if we know that 19/24 is what she finished on her to-do list, the extension says what fraction of her to-do list does she still have to do after lunch. So I'm going to set that up as a subtraction problem. And her whole to-do list would be 24 out of 24, 24/24. And we're subtracting what she already completed, which was 19 out of 24. So that would give her an answer of 5/24. She still will have to do 5/24 of her list. So the answer for the actual question is over here, the 19/24, and this section over here would be the extension.